idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They are a power man should never have trifled with. One that brought Valeria its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us.
Legacy is what you pass down to your children and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience interviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the house of a lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house that endures beyond sigils, and aims to leave a legacy no other podcast has. So it's time to call the Banos, for this is the House of the Empire.
It helps when you unmute your mic for a very special live episode, doesn't it? Sometimes that's just what's going to happen. Life's going to bite you in the ass, and you roll with it, but it's okay. There are going to be plenty of thoughts and opinions that we will need to make sure that we stay unmuted for this season finale recap of House of the Dragon. This is House of the Empire live on Phantom Empire, and we're going live because we're not going to be getting any more of this show for the better part of 12, 14, possibly 16 months at the most. And there is a lot to take in this final episode. And so we're going to be giving very raw, very unpolished thoughts tonight. And not very much of this episode is going to be spoiler-free. We're going to do spoiler-free thoughts around the horn to kick things off. And then we are diving into it because this episode is just so full that we don't want to waste any time longer than we have to talking, on pins and needles, walking on eggshells, hoping that people haven't gotten around to seeing it. You know what? I'm officially lifting the embargo like right now. I don't know what power or authority is given to me for that, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways. I'm Zach, and with me, as he always is the creator of the channel and my good friend Sean. Dude, we've got a really great episode lined up. We got a really great panel. In 60 to 80 seconds, what kind of spoiler-free initial thoughts would you give for the Black Queen season finale of House of the Dragon?
I'll keep them technical then. The sound design in this episode is amazing. The cinematography, again, actually one-ups last week. The acting, I don't think anybody can criticize the acting in the show. So it's been remarkable, and the season finale was. Am I sounding okay to you guys? By the way, I got something going on just with me, not with anybody else, I think. Anyway,
it's just you, like always.
Story of my life. Jade would agree with you.
I know. I was saying that on her behalf.
I loved this episode, and at the same time, a really hard watch.
Okay, well, we're going to get into that last comment in just a second here. He's kind of becoming a faceless man as his green screen kind of drops in and out on him a little bit. But Johnny Waters is back for another discussion of this show. And aside from a few excerpts that I have picked up on over the last week or two, you're the only one who's really had a deep dive into the source material. So I know you're going to have plenty of thoughts on either end, both as a viewer and as a reader. Um, Johnny, what spoiler-free thoughts could you shed some light on as we dive into this discussion?
Oh man, it is on like Donkey Kong eating prawn at dawn in Taiwan. It just yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm glad Sean's face was blacked out a little bit. It kind of kept us from seeing what other word he might have said.
You
No,
can,
I'm excited. It's-
you can not do that again now to be real nice.
So I shouldn't speak in rhyme. Is it not the time?
Oh man, is this Eminem's cousin Skittle? I don't even know what's going on right now.
I wonder.
Kieran's also back with us for another great discussion. Welcome back, man. What kind of thoughts would you give to somebody who hasn't seen the episode yet to convince them that they need to like step away from this live stream and go watch it right now?
Wait, you're assuming I'm positive about this?
I'm just saying, what would you do to tell them to go watch it? What would you say?
I would tell them it's like I would tell them it's kind of like a train wreck. You should definitely watch it. It's going to keep your attention. Doesn't mean you're going to like it, but it's something. I'll tell you that much. And that doesn't mean I'm negative. It doesn't mean I'm positive. We'll find out later. It's kind of a little bit of both.
I wasn't necessarily assuming anything per se, but I'm trying to get like a broader scope of like what is going on in people's mentalities that they haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. Because from what I've seen online, the numbers that are pinging are showing up in the millions for HBO already. Like from start to finish, this season of this show just had huge numbers as far as the turnout on the HBO app goes. And so for people who haven't gotten around to seeing it, I know that, life happens, shit happens, but for those that really want to watch it, they probably should have by now. And anyone that hasn't really needs motivation probably to give it a shot. And so I was just curious, if you encountered somebody like that, what would you tell them? So but there are things to critique about this episode 10, the Black Queen. There's a lot of character exposition. There's a lot of set design, sound design, as Sean was alluding to. There's a lot of interesting choices, I guess, with certain pieces of cinematography and line selection, even who says what. So I thought that the best way to get through that was chronologically, like we'd been doing. But when Sean keeps bringing up all of these different components, it makes me rethink it a little bit and be like, should we just look at the examples of the great cinematography? Should we just look at the examples of the acting and the execution of it all? Like, how would you describe this episode to somebody? Like Sean was already describing it technically like that. But how would you describe it? Kieran used train wreck. Johnny, what kind of adjectives would you use for this episode?
Intriguing.
Intriguing. Okay. I can work with that. I'm just going to go ahead and go kind of chronologically. And for those of you that haven't seen the episode yet, this is your official spoiler warning. We're only 8 minutes into the episode, but we're already going into spoilers because there's just too much of this episode to kind of beat around the bush about and be like, should we say this? Should we say that? No, our friend Gabriel's in the chat on YouTube, and he's already kind of spoiling things for us. So we're going to go ahead and spoil it too. Yes, he did. He did. Luke got the worst end of pretty much anybody in this episode, although I dare say Rhaenyra had a pretty bad go of it as well, but we'll get to that. News of Viserys' death and her subsequent miscarriage. A very interesting way to kick off this episode, because it was a miscarriage in episode 1 that kind of set everything leading up to this episode in motion. And then it's almost like they're trying to come up with some parallels to moments that we've already encountered in this show, almost to harken back a little bit while also trying to help move the story forward. Sean, was it just a little too gratuitous with some of the shots that we got with the miscarriage? Because I feel like they took it up a notch compared to the one that we got with the C-section stillbirth from episode 1.
I don't know. It's an interesting comparison to throw out there. It definitely harkens back to that first episode. It kind of bookends season 1. I don't know if they showed too much necessarily. I mean, it's Game of Thrones. Apologies. Go to one of the other guys.
Okay, we'll toss it over to Johnny. Then we'll just keep going around the circle. Sean's a multitasking genius, but sometimes that multitasking catches up to him. So we'll circle back.
I don't know if gratuitous is like. Do I think that it was necessary for the story? Not really. You know, it didn't really serve an overarching purpose other than to sort of, paint a big giant circle back to episode 1 and sort of tie the two events together. I mean, I think the unnecessary parts was when she pretty much did it herself. Like the way she just sort of, and there's really no other way to say it other than, just saying it. When she reached up in there and just ripped the baby out, was just like, oh, that's unnecessary. And this is, for me being a book, I definitely don't. I don't think this happened in the book again. So it was just another sort of addition to the series. I mean, I'd be wrong about that because a lot of the events when the dance start kind of get conflated together and made into one. But I mean, it certainly isn't described like that I can recall. But it has been a while since I read the book. I'll admit that. But it was just to me, it just felt unnecessary. It was unnecessarily graphic for a moment that was not necessary to the overarching plot.
Kieran, when you saw this scene, what was kind of going through your head? Because for me, I'm finding it interesting that maybe I'm the only one that was making that parallel. Did you notice any parallels to episode 1 during the sequence, or what were you thinking of as she started doubling over the table and Daemon is kind of in his own little headspace, and she's in like a totally different world as her world comes crashing in on her.
Yeah, it was funny because it like when you see it, when you view it at the start, it seems like she's so stressed out from everything that's happening, and at the start of the episode, she's being shown as trying to be peaceful and almost trying to take over for her dad, and being as he was Viserys the Peaceful or whatever. Is that what they called him, Viserys the Peaceful?
Yeah.
I don't know. I really enjoyed that name in the last thing. I thought that was pretty cool. Being that's his legacy, but it seems like she tried to carry on from him. Obviously, that changed a little bit at the end of the episode. Spoilers, but when that happened, it was all the stress and stuff like that. and it seemed like it was going to be something important. But then by the end of the episode, it seemed like it was unimportant. Like it's like at the time when it happened, I was like, oh man, this is intense. Like I didn't find it too graphic because too graphic for Game of Thrones. What is that? Is there like they push the envelope so much you can only, I don't know. I didn't think it was too graphic. I thought it was actually kind of an interesting moment. Obviously, it was a sad moment, so you can't call it something great. But I just thought that it was interesting how it started off as an important looking moment, and then by the end of the episode, it seems like it was there was no need for it. Like I don't think they got what they were going for out of it.
Sean, you got your hand raised. I'm assuming you're back and have thoughts. I know that your SO has some in the chat as well, and we'll try to bring those up. Woo! Don't know if y'all heard that, but god damn.
So you got a storm, I got fireworks. These two are gonna end up having something at some point in time, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's like Storm's End 2.0 over here, apparently. Jeez.
So I basically completely disagree with what the two of these fellas have said. I understand their take on it. But it was totally necessary to the episode. We watched someone lose her child in a premature childbirth because of stress and the news that she's delivered. Although, and Johnny can back me up on this one, I don't think this conveyed it because it's kind of hard to see the baby. But in the book, the baby is very much like Daenerys's baby that comes out in Game of Thrones season 1. It's like half human, half dragon. And I didn't get that at all from last night's episode. Maybe you guys had better visuals than I did, but I couldn't clearly make out anything that wasn't human. But I think it goes a long way. And again, we're talking spoilers, so I got to bring up the other points to make this one. Is literally in the span of 48 hours, she goes through childbirth back then, somehow is able to continue on after losing it. She gets the news of her dad dying, the news of the throne being taken. Then she has the encounter with Daemon, which is a whole other bag of worms. And then she loses another son, all within 48 hours. And we see her, I don't know if one of you guys, I just heard from a distance, brought up how like she's been keeping it together and almost following the footsteps of her dad. And once she finds out about Luke's death, like that's it. That's there is no Viserys way. So for me, it perfectly served the plot of this episode. It showed what her intentions were, and then it showed where, okay, this was the line. This was the line that got crossed, albeit accidentally in the TV show version. And she, if there's an image that I want to pull up here that Zach actually sent me earlier. It's not the exact image you sent me, dude, but
what did I send you?
It reminded me of this.
I had that exact response watching it.
Yeah.
Like when she turned around, I was like, "Oh, that's very Dany."
And to be honest, the one to the left might have more reason to do that than the one to
the right. Has a reason.
I think the one to the right had a reason too. It wasn't. We don't get to see Daenerys' whole life. We get to see 10 years of Daenerys' life. We get to hear about how alone she was, but we never get to see any of it. And like I've heard people. I'll make this quick. I know we got to move on. I've heard people go, "Well, I didn't care about Luke dying because that actor was in the show for 2 episodes and the kid was in the show for 4. You're not supposed to care that the character died. You're supposed to care about how Rhaenyra feels about her son getting obliterated."
Yep.
That's to me the story that they were trying to convey. Not, oh, we're supposed to feel terribly for the kid, which I mean, we probably should, to be honest, it's a kid. But, it's more so the impact it takes on her. And by the way, the acting performance in that final shot by Matt Damon, fuck's sake, Matt Smith and Emma Darcy is like, you don't even see their faces for 90% of that shot. And yet they clearly convey the message that they're trying to convey on screen. And it's heartbreaking.
For me, I'll say this because I don't like. I know you weren't here for it, but just to sort of affirm what I say, it wasn't the events; it was the gratuitousness of them that got me. Like like I said, when she reached up in there and pulled out the babe, I was like, oh, that's unnecessary.
You know what's funny is that happens in the book exactly like that, but I thought
I don't remember that passage from the book, so
there's no way they're going to show this on screen like this.
That might be why I sort of have forgotten it because a lot of
did.
Yeah.
I thought it was fairly comparable to the medieval C-section. They were both very gross, and
they were for very different reasons.
I don't think this was worse than that. I think it was pretty comparable. So
here's the part about that scene just before that got to me, and this kind of ties into Jay's comment. I don't know if you're able to pull it up, Sean. It was she has a bullet point set of comments that she made earlier. She said, I believe that it was necessary, one, to prove how strong she is, two, literally the only reason she would have missed the strategy meeting. That's a really big point because she's just been named Queen of the Realm by her rights of succession. And the only thing, literally the only thing that would keep her from being at her first ever strategy meeting, her first ever small council meeting, would be because there's a fucking baby coming out of her vajayjay. Like, that's the only thing keeping her from being a part of this meeting. And I saw it in the behind the scenes featurette, is that in the first episode, she actually meets with her mother, and her mom talks about how childbirth is their battleground. And now she's literally about to go to battle. She's about to go to war for her throne. And she's experiencing a different type of battle in her bedchambers. And for her to be going to that battle while also missing the physical person versus person battle was really, really compelling to me, because it kind of helps you focus on just what kind of strength and capabilities Rhaenyra has. Like, this show obviously has been about her, and the emphasis on how much of Dragonstone she controls and how much of her own body she controls was evidenced in that first sequence.
You don't think it would have shown it would have shown her to be stronger if she went to the meeting while having the baby?
I mean, I think that's just too much like the earlier one where, she came out dripping blood to the queen after, what was that? Was that Luke's?
That was pretty awesome.
Or was that
I remember that.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that was
pretty badass. That was the first episode after the time jump, right? So
yeah, I think it was Joffrey's birth.
Yes, because Laenor named him without her knowledge. But I think to me, that whole first little bit definitely affirmed Rhaenyra's strength, but it was more the sequence after that really just sold it all. When Daemon's whole thing was he's on a war footing. He is ready to go to war right this minute, right now, immediately. We need to react. And Rhaenyra is much more, at this point, still trying to honor her father and bring everybody back to her plans, to her vision, which is to prepare for war, to be ready for war. And she takes a stance throughout that, the first blow of this war will not be struck by us. And I'd argue that it wasn't.
I don't know if I know we're going to get to the Daemon Rhaenyra scene in a bit, but I don't know if enough people are paying attention to his reaction to his brother's death.
Denial. Absolute denial.
No, I didn't think it's denial at all.
I mean denial more in the sense of his immediate response is, well, they killed him. They murdered him. Whereas when we saw him last, he's very...
I mean, they did. They did help kill him. They full on admit it. Could they have lived a few more years? Maybe. But he's not wrong in assuming that. He's completely in the right. But I thought when they showed him on the beach there, now you would assume he's heard about the baby at that point, because then he walks in to check on her, and then we skip to the funeral. Like, he just lost his brother, who, albeit, think what you want about Daemon, other than Rhaenyra, probably the person he loves most in this world, despite having differences. He's literally falls to his knees at the shore, which, I mean, can you name one other time where we see Daemon on his knees other than what it has to do with Viserys? And the answer is we have not. It was tough, and I think it adds even more to what we see happen later on in the episode. And to be clear, I think he has points too. I think his points, even though it ended up being an accident, are very, very valid. And she maybe was being too much like her dad early on.
In certain elements, absolutely. But I mean, I think her plans to, shore up her allies and be ready, because it does, obviously, I think, no matter who did it, the realms were never going to look kindly on the side that strikes first. They never do. Like in any major conflict, it's never who strikes. It's never who strikes first is always the bad guy, no matter the intentions. Like, I mean, a cause is one that's pointed to the most is World War II with Pearl Harbor. There were a lot of reasons for Japan to go to war with the U.S., but the act of Pearl Harbor is the one that everyone points to. That's it. That's the moment. Nothing that happened before, but that moment, which, of course, unconscionable beyond reproach. But, that's the moment everyone points to, just the same as the Battle of Storm's End. The battle is the point everyone points to as the start of the Dance of Dragons. Not anything that happened before, that individual moment. And that's just the way history works. It always remembers the first action.
You have to have a pivotal moment like that kind of helps you realize you need to join the fight, to help you recognize that this is something that you have to do. And Pearl Harbor is a great real world example. I can think of one from Star Trek, a great episode of Deep Space Nine called "In the Pale Moonlight." I freaking love that episode for so many reasons. And if you want to have a really great discussion about when to join the fight, when's the right time to join the fight, what are the right reasons to join the fight, that's a great episode for it. But this is also a really great episode because there's no greater motivation to go to war with somebody than over losing a loved one, especially a kid. Half the people here in this group are parents, and I know that y'all would absolutely raise arms if y'all lost one of your little ones. So
even without that, just blood. I'd raise arms for my blood anytime.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And so that's what's so great about a show like this is it's set in a timepiece, but it gives you a lot of relevant circumstances that people can relate to, even if it's not 100% relatable. Because obviously we don't have dragons, but if we lost a loved one that was that close to us, then yeah. And Jade says, I would throw hands just for someone looking at my kids the wrong way, let alone something like this. Don't mess with the mama bear. Do not. It will not go well.
I did have that exact thought when I was watching this show, like that this show must hit differently for people who have kids and must hit differently for, people who experience miscarriages, people who has experienced the death of children, which is, you don't really even want to think about these things, but people go through these things, and I'm assuming out of the 10, 11, 12 million people that watch the show or whatever, that
about three times.
Some of them have experienced that, and so this show must hit really differently for people, who do that. And I'm sure there's a group of people who this show probably means a lot different. It means different, not just more impactful, because people understand loss in different ways and things like that, but it must hit differently for so many different people, and I think that's a very important part of the show. So I did think about that throughout the episode.
So we're gonna be doing a list here in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure what week we're doing it, but it'll be our top 10 characters in House of the Dragon season 1, but the way we're doing it is we're all gonna compile our 10 characters, and the 10 characters that get the most votes, it'll be one combined list. And one of the characters that I really, I'm only going this way because Kieran brought it up, is, you're right. I think it does hit differently. And for me, like what Viserys was going through, like that was like getting punched in the jaw, because I didn't know that happened at all with that character. I knew he got sick, but I was always under the impression he was just poisoned. Didn't know he was suffering from a legitimate illness. That sort of like hit in a very deep way, and I always go back and forth. Am I more a Daemon guy, or am I more a Viserys guy? And I still don't know, but I do think it hits different. I think just this show in I'm not saying Game of Thrones doesn't have family aspects to it. It does, but House of the Dragon is a whole nother level of family issues.
That brings me into a around the horn question that I wanted to bring up. We got to be as real as we can with this, guys. Would you, in these circumstances, be more like Daemon, wanting to go to war instantly? Or would you be more like Rhaenyra, wanting to rally the troops and call the banners? Sean?
And it's got to be one of the two, no middle ground?
It's got no middle ground. Are you either Daemon, go to war right now, or Rhaenyra, let's call our banners and see where we're at?
I don't think Daemon was gonna, just charge on King's Landing without a plan. But yeah, I'd be more Daemon. And to be honest, they pay for not taking his way.
Johnny?
I mean, I think there's that line, right? There's you can be Rhaenyra to a point, and once you pass that point, then you have to do it. Like I said, once that action has occurred, you can't sit back and not, literally up until the very end of that episode, I'm Rhaenyra, call the banners, prepare, be ready, have everybody at your back, so that when you do act, you can act with, appropriate force to achieve your goals. Once everything happens at Storm's End, then I mean, yes, there's still you need to be Rhaenyra, but there's definitely going to be a lot more Daemon, and just there has to be a response to an action like that.
Well,
an immediate response.
I love this excerpt that I found online, because apparently in the book, Daemon wasn't present for the news of Lucerys' death. He was somewhere else and sent a raven when he got news. And as the Black Council sat to consider how to strike back, a raven arrived from Harrenhal. An eye for an eye, a son for a son, Daemon wrote. Lucerys shall be avenged.
No comment.
I unfortunately I've done a little bit of digging, and I know a couple more spoilers than I did a couple of days ago. So
Stop digging.
That's really weird, because in this episode we got an eye for a son, not an eye for an eye, not a son for. We just got.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that he got the eye.
He got the eye and the bloody rest of him too. Damn it!
And he got a lot more than the eye.
He got a lot more than he bargained for. He got war. That's what he got.
Maybe Moby Dick, that sucker, just sort of flew into the mouth without getting chewed up. And to be clear,
I mean, Luke might on that, but
the debris could have been.
Aerys definitely didn't.
No, but seriously, in the book implies that there's 3 different accounts of it, I believe, and one of them is he survives it. And because he falls from such a distance and hits the water, he's eventually found, but has no memory of the rest of his life. But it's a debate between whether that happened or whether he just got chewed to bits. And this is the problem when people, and I know Johnny's a big book guy, but I think even he would acknowledge the difference between following the 5 George R. R. Martin Westeros books about Game of Thrones, the TV show, is you get point of view in those books, a ton of it. In the book Blood and Fire, you get none. It's all assumption based off of history. It's.
I mean, the best example is A Song of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones series is all first-person narrative. Blood and Fire is third-person narrative.
Blood and Water.
Blood and Water. Yeah, Blood and Water.
Sequel, Blood and Water.
Water.
Blood and Fire is all third-person narrative, so it's entirely different. Which is honestly part of the reason why I was able to read the book. I don't like the first-person narrative of A Song of Ice and Fire. That's why I haven't finished the books. I know the events of the books, but I haven't physically read them through.
Kieran, I don't know if we got to you. The conversation just kept going. Would you be Team Damon, attack now, or Team Rhaenyra, rally the troops?
I've always been like, I mean, of course everybody has a breaking point, but mine's extremely hard to find. So I'm definitely Rhaenyra. I'm not really I've been punched in the face and been like, whoa, like calm down, dude. And most people get punched in the face. It's on, but I'd like to think I'm Rhaenyra. I actually really probably highest on Rhaenyra's character in this episode than any other episode. Like, I really respected her and I really enjoyed the acting, and I was actually super impressed.
Okay, as long as you're bringing this up, Sean, I have to give praise to this table, because if it wasn't epic in the Game of Thrones series before, it definitely is now. Having fire and hot coals illuminate the strategy map the way that it did just gave it an extra ambiance that I didn't know it was capable of, and now I kind of want one. I want that table glossed over with like glass, kind of like they do with the Han Solo and Carbonite coffee tables. I want that for a coffee table. It looks so freaking epic.
With LEDs and it lights up slowly. Like,
yes. Because I've got like one of those orange flickering lights out on my porch right now that I'm using for like the spooky fall season, and it looks like a flame on the front porch. You could probably get something like that underneath a table like this and give it a very similar effect without having to use actual hot coals. But oh my gosh, to be able to visualize and conceptualize all of the different goings on in a very tangible and hands-on way, I freaking loved it.
this is actually in our new intro I'm working on, so it'll be a permanent part of the show going forward.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think coals and candles on tables probably against the fire code. Don't do that.
Fire code? What's that? We don't have those in Texas. We just burn candles wherever the hell we want. More like a salamander. Hey, Terrence, haven't seen you for a while. Welcome back.
Damn, I was enjoying the vacation.
Okay, so as Daemon is urging war, and as Rhaenyra is starting to embrace her role as under the title of queen, I don't want to gloss over the cremation ceremony. I'll open it up for any thoughts and commentaries on the cremation sequence, because again, it's another parallel. The death of Viserys' child and the funeral ceremony that transpires in episode 1 has a parallel here in episode 10, with her starting to kind of understand her father's perspective a little bit and understanding the role that she has to embrace. But one of the first things that she has to do is stand up to Otto freaking Hightower. This bitch shows up at exactly the worst possible time. And the conversation that transpires this time around, very, very different from the one that transpired a few episodes prior. We'll go around the horn and give our thoughts on these sequences really quickly. Sean, any thoughts on the burial and her ascension with her father's crown, and then basically her first act as queen when she faces up against Otto?
I really dug everything about the way that they shot it. I loved the kneeling, and I loved that Rainey's didn't just kneel either, because it's really not her place to do that. That's Corliss's call at this point in time, because he's already sailing there. It just hit with me. The music was perfect. The acting was amazing. What was that? Eric or Ark? I don't know which is which, but
Eric with an E.
Was it Eric with an E? I thought it was Eric with an A. Oh man.
So, the wiki I'm looking at says Sir Eric with an E.
Yeah, the one with the A in the show, I believe they're pronouncing Arik. So thank God for that, at least. Whatever one it was, I thought it was very moving, and I also thought for Damon, like, you get some parallels back to the 8th episode when he picks up the crown and puts it on Viserys's head. Is he sort of looks at it again, and I don't know if he's thinking back to when he picked it up and put it on Viserys's head or not, but it's just a very moving scene. And then Otto, wow, there's some words I would like to use that I can't use, and even I won't use them on here. But yeah, what a manipulative piece of shit is what I would say about him. I don't care about your stupid poster. I think Damon's right at that point. And like, even before the Storm's End debacle, I think the way that Otto comes in and tries to approach that, like, that should have been it right there.
Johnny, thoughts?
It was awesome because
Sorry,
it was
Johnny, 1 second. Sorry. I'm not saying the show should have done it differently, just so we're clear. I'm saying, like, if this was real life, the character shouldn't have allowed it to go any further, but I'm fine with how it played out in the show.
I think it played out almost the way it had to, because at that moment Rhaenyra was still more peaceful about it. Like, she couldn't be the one to strike the first blow, and unquestionably that's what that would have been. You have them in your territory, in your keep. Obviously, we're not actually in the keep, but they were in the grounds of the keep, and there's no way to make that look good if you do it. So the Daemon way to do it would have been to do exactly what Daemon wanted to do. But I think that was another moment where you got to see the strength of Rhaenyra in her beliefs that, I won't be the first one to strike. I want, she, to a degree, wants this to end as peacefully as it can. Like, she knows war is coming, but she wants to keep it, I don't want to say as small, but as fast and efficient as it can possibly be. And if you kill Otto on that bridge, there's nothing fast and efficient about it. It's going to get hard and bloody, and you will look more like the villain.
Hard and bloody. Just how we like it.
And that's our show tonight, folks.
I'm gonna guess Mrs. Arnold didn't hear that, or you're gonna get a smack.
I probably will later.
You'll deserve it when you do.
When things like this happen in Game of Thrones, you realize that you're in a different world. Like, it's the same thing as at the start of a battle when the captains meet. You're like, why don't they just fucking kill the other guys right now? We're like, well, because that's not how battle is done. And it's, John could have cut off fucking Ramsay Bolton's head, like, when they met up there, but no, they met up and they discussed terms, and they're like, no, we're gonna fight, and then they went back. Like, sometimes you're like, man, that side had 3 badasses, and this side had 3 okay guys. They could have just fucking killed them and been like, oh, see you later. Like, their whole armies are way back here, right? So why not just kill them while there? Because that's not how things are done. And I think a lot of that speaks towards, maybe not in Ramsay's case, but in most of them, like, all these characters believe they're the good guy. So they're not like, oh, I'm just going to do this, I'll just do that. Maybe not Daemon too, but most of these characters, like, they have a code. Even the knights on the bad side, the knights on the good side, they have a code. You don't just kill someone who comes as an emissary, or you don't kill the messenger. Like, that's not how it happens. You got to follow a certain set of rules. And I don't think it always has to do with public perception either. It's just, a lot of people, I think, believe that if you don't, if you don't go by your word and you don't keep the code of honor, then, what are you? And I think that's where this is a different world than now, because I think if people from our world were to do the same thing, then yeah, they'd be like, I'll just wait till they come to the captain's meeting and then I'll pull out my gun and shoot them and then whatever, So I think it's interesting when you get transported to a different world and you're like, why do they do this? Because they don't do that there. That's not what they do in Westeros.
I think there is a certain decorum that needs to be accounted for. It almost reminds me of the old battle tactics that I saw in the Mel Gibson movie The Patriot. There's one scene towards the beginning of the movie where it's just Americans against the British just shooting musket fire at each other in a field. And every now and then a cannon will go off and it'll take out somebody's leg or some shit like that. But the old traditional types of battle were the ones where it was just power against power to see who was most accurate, who had more forces, and who was going to outlast the other. And it was never about stealth and guerrilla warfare until a certain point in history. And the Americans ended up using that to their advantage, but that's a whole other story. But that's not really something that you see a whole lot of in this particular version of Game of Thrones, at least not yet. I have a feeling we could end up seeing something along those lines in season 2 or season 3. But there's just a certain expectation to do things a certain way. And what I found interesting is that Daemon again is very gung ho. He is very let's end this now, end this discussion now. And Rhaenyra seems to be the only one who can kind of rein him in. But there comes a time where even Daemon kind of reaches a breaking point and basically calls out his new queen. And I know that there's a paradigm shift involved in that. You've got to come to understand she's not just your niece. She's not just your wife. She's not just the princess of Dragonstone anymore. She is your queen. And there are certain things that you don't say to your queen, especially not in front of all of her trusted advisors and counselors. And again, goes back to decorum. I love the cool that Rhaenyra keeps in that scene right after Daemon blows his top. She doesn't retort. She doesn't get angry. She just says, clear the room, and then calls him out. Like, that is probably one of the most royal things I've seen her do in this whole show, is just keeping her composure, clearing the room, and then dealing with the circumstance.
I just want to dive in here for a second before we get to that scene that clearly we're getting to. So Kieran was talking about how, like, there's a certain way that you do things in this world, especially for knights. Knights just don't go chop someone's head off. And I was trying to go really, really fast to have this ready for when Kieran was saying this, but I was slow. Kieran's point is right. He's spot on. Except for this guy. Who just does whatever.
Yeah, that guy loses his temper on occasion.
Well, that guy is a baby back bitch. We've established this.
And he does not deserve to be in this episode, which is why he wasn't.
Thank God. I mean,
agreed.
Well, let's go ahead and go into that scene then, Sean, because I feel like we've about reached that point, and we're getting really, really close to the big scene that kind of sets the stage for season 2. But that confrontation was pretty important and pretty poignant for not just character development, but also an understanding of how the Blacks intend to move forward, not only with their strategy, but also just with their relationship.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a bunch of people that read way too much into this scene, if I'm being honest. Now, let me start off by saying this. don't ever grab your wife or your niece. Okay, really, don't ever grab your niece by the throat, and never your wife unless you got something else going on.
Can we just say anyone unless it's consent?
Well, no, I don't even think if your niece says it's okay that you should be doing that. That's fine.
Well, I mean, that's fair,
You know,
but
yeah,
this is Game of Thrones we're talking about.
So yeah, I'm not saying it's okay. He crossed a line. He should not have crossed it. But I do want to paint a picture here for a second with what both of these characters are going through. Wow, I almost called her Daenerys.
Jesus, Zach.
Oh boy. Okay, so Rhaenyra loses her father, who, even though he was in pretty bad shape, it's pretty clear when they left there, they thought, and remember, she was supposed to go back fairly soon, that they were going to see each other again. She did not think that was their final farewell. She loses her father. She loses her baby, loses her crown to an extent, and goes through all that. Daemon, who I think we know some dudes don't deal with their emotions the best, loses the closest thing he's ever had in his life, his brother. Loses another child, loses another child. Let's be real. It is another child. And then at least in his eyes, he sees Rhaenyra opening herself up and showing weakness, and that they're going to exploit it. And even though it happens by accident, it happens. That all that said, it does not condone, and I'm not condoning him choking her. That's the line crosser for sure. And I mean, he can grab me like that too. But that's another story. But the heartbreaking part for me during this scene is when Daemon pieces it all together, and he does piece it all together in this scene. And it's, oh, no, he never told me. And guess what? At one point, I was the heir, which means he never, ever intended to honor me as his heir. And that's got to be, like, as a guy who finally met peace, helped his brother, has matured to an extent, like, that's got to be the, like, I don't want to say make him a villain, because I still don't believe he is that. But boy, like, that is the amount of pain and loss in that room just with those two characters is insane. And they're lucky they didn't kill each other right there and then.
I think that moment, to me, like when he pieced out, you're right, he absolutely did piece it all together. But to me, I took a different reaction to that. To a degree, you're right, that he didn't trust him as the heir, but that it was Daemon realizing that Viserys didn't trust him the way he thought he did. And that's a big deal because, if you go back to like the histories again, the first person that raised banners for Viserys at his crowning, like when he was coronated, like I can't remember what it was called, but when he was named the next king, at the Great Council, it was Daemon raising banners for his brother. He was the first one to champion his brother's cause to be the next king, and then obviously for Rhaenyra was 14 when she was named the heir. She confirmed in this episode. So Daemon would have been the heir for what, about 20 odd years? So, I mean, it definitely, to find out that his brother kept something that important from him for that long,
It's heartbreaking.
once it definitely, he lost his brother in that moment, and it was definitely heartbreaking. I mean, I don't condone his reaction before that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't know what their sex life is like. Maybe that's a common occurrence for them in the bedroom. I have no idea. But in that moment, it was wrong. It was. I don't know what he was. He was trying to get her strength. I don't even know what he was trying to achieve. Obviously, he didn't achieve it. did more to paint him negatively than it, like that was you get like that really like, oh god, Damon's, you see flashes of him before that as a, not so great dude, but that one was very much a, oh, there's a lot of bats in the belfry here.
Hey, he's a big egg.
What are you guys apologizing for? Is this like
It's a Matt Smith love fest, man.
he killed his other wife?
He did.
Don't get into this. Oh, he just accidentally spooked the horse, and the horse was the real bad guy. He fucking killed his other wife. Like, that's not like, he deserves some.
We don't know that he spooked. We don't know that he spooked the horse. We don't know what spooked the horse. All we know is that he, took his paraplegic wife out of her misery. Right?
I said before episode 1 of this show that I thought the character he was closest to was Jaime Lannister, and this episode cemented that for me. With that moment where he grabs Rhaenyra in the neck. Does anybody remember what happened after good old Tywin's death? Just flashing back to anybody who's watched Game of Thrones. Season 5 premiere and a certain action that Jaime forces on Cersei and right on top
Oh, God, on the cap,
yeah,
too. Oh, God, I forgot about that.
There's a lot of parallels between these characters so far.
Yikes! I very much forgot about that moment until you reminded me of it. And
I thought I forgot to bring up earlier when we were talking about the crown. I think when he picked up the crown, I think he was like, I would like to wear this. I don't think he was like thinking about Viserys and his death. I think he was like, this is an interesting crown here. How would it fit on my head? Like, I mean, I think everyone in this show wants the crown. I don't know if everybody wants to wear it in front of the public, but I think everyone in this show wants to be the person with the strings at the very least. I think pretty much everybody is seeing that throne and being like, I would really like to be the person who controls that throne. I'd like to sit on the throne in secret. So I don't know. I didn't get the same feeling, and I still don't get the same feeling from Daemon as you guys do. I feel like he's a bad person, and he's just waiting around to become an even worse person. I don't think.
Don't try and take our warm and fuzzies away.
Well, I don't give a shit about Matt Smith either, because I don't like Doctor Who. That show's a piece of shit. But
you're just wrong.
I totally understand why you would see it that way, though, and I do. You're not alone in seeing it that way. I don't think, though, he's a clear-cut bad guy. I think they've made that pretty clear, even in the behind-the-scenes things. I think he's, comic book character. He's kind of like Vegeta, a little bit. Who, yeah, you like him because he likes guys that you're cheering for, but if killing you, gets him what he needs, he's going to do it. So he's definitely not a good guy.
One track mind.
Vegeta's a good guy?
No, fuck no. That's my point.
Oh, but it tracks to the point he's making. Like Vegeta's very one track mind. His one track is I must beat Goku, and then it's don't fuck with my family. Daemon's is I want power and don't fuck with my family.
Yeah, I don't think he would take off the head of Vaemon Velaryon for just any comment. When it's something that is directly aimed at the people that matter most to him, he gets riled up. And it's interesting to see like the split of his character, at least for me in this episode, where sometimes he is brash and he is bold. And then there are other times when he actually sits back and listens to what people have to say. But I would say 9 times out of 10, that person he's listening to is Rhaenyra. And a lot of the times he's disagreeing with her. And even more times than that, he's kind of going behind her back a little bit. She's saying, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to bolster up our strengths. And he's like, I agree. And she's like, let's go talk to the Starks. And he's like, I've got a better idea. Let's go get us another dragon. And so this is something that Jade has been talking about in the chat, and it's probably an appropriate time to bring it up since we're on the topic of Daemon. He has a scene in here where he walks into a cave in Dragonstone where he is singing an old song that is in High Valyrian. And in the shadows emerges a very, very large dragon, one of the largest, second largest to Vhagar, if I'm not mistaken, in the form of Vermithor. And I didn't do a whole lot of digging on Vermithor. I believe it has a nickname, the bronze something, I forget what it is. But Vermithor's breath is said to be so strong it can melt steel and rock. So
It's Bronze Fury.
The Bronze Fury. If there was ever anything to try to compete with the largest dragon in the world, which is what the Greens currently have, I don't disagree with Daemon on this perspective that it might be a good idea to have a somewhat equally badass dragon on your side as well.
Anybody gonna?
I mean,
I'm trying
I
to
think it
ready a dragon graphic for us. Sorry, fellas.
was sort of necessary, I guess, to their cause. I mean, Vermithor is, one of the denizens of Dragonstone, and you do need him. It's better to have him than to not have him. So I think, again, that just sort of goes back to Rhaenyra's shore up our team, shore up our allies and call the banners and amass as many dragons as they possibly can. So that sort of tracks to that plan to, have this ability to, bring upon as many dragons as they possibly can.
But I feel like, wasn't that more Daemon's idea though? I think Rhaenyra was going based on people, on numbers and alliances. I don't think she really considered amassing other dragons until Daemon even brought it up.
I mean, no, but it was going to come up anyway. There are 2 riderless dragons on Dragonstone. If they can turn them to their cause, either finding them a rider or taming them, as it were, to be unriderless and still follow their commands. It's something they would have done eventually, I think.
She mentioned that she didn't want to rule, a scorched kingdom, which obviously brought you back to season 8 of Game of Thrones, which was funny because that was the not Danny type of way of thinking, and then obviously in the last 10 seconds, we feel like she might have a change of heart in some of those opinions, but
there are
really great writing and dialogue in this episode to point you back to Game of Thrones and earlier episodes of House of the Dragon. They really did a great job of tying it all together.
There's a couple of little digs that get written in there. That one about not wanting to rule a kingdom of ash and bone, I believe was the quote. And then when she is getting ready to send a message or an envoy to Winterfell, she says something to the effect of, "I've never known a Stark to forget his oath," or something like that.
Yeah,
and that is I feel like a tongue-in-cheek dig at Robb a little bit, because he breaks his oath for love rather than his commitment in season 3, I believe it is. And so there's definitely some moments that are very, very tongue-in-cheek regarding stuff that transpires a couple hundred years later. It's interesting when you have the full context like that, how you can notice some of those little digs and little moments. Gotta unmute yourself, buddy.
Seeing how well that worked out for Rob, right?
Yeah, for real. So Jade's bringing up a point in the chat that I feel like we probably should touch on, because this is something that I'm not super clear on either. But Sean, you have affirmed it non-verbally. Let's go ahead and affirm it verbally and give some context as to why. He goes and he makes an appeal to Vermithor, but he's already got Caraxes. What does he need with 2 dragons, and what precedent is there for someone to have 2 dragons under their control, under their leadership? Why would Daemon want 2 dragons, and how is that even possible?
Daenerys. I know the show doesn't do it.
She's not. She only ever rides Drogon.
She is a mother of 3, but she rides 1.
Correct, but the other 2 still follow her command and her lead.
Yes.
Can I just point this out too with this show in terms of something it does better than Game of Thrones? So we go to season 8, and don't get me wrong, I don't hate that season nearly as much as other people do. I think it's good. But John literally is just like, "Oh, hey, Rhaegal, yeah, I'm just gonna jump on you, and here we go." It's like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? And at least
He could smell the blood of the dragon in him.
right? But there's no they quickly did that.
I think though, like if you look more towards the books, though, like in the books, it's assumed that Jon is a warg as well, and he is inside Rhaegal's head.
Yeah, but they never once.
Now the TV series never touched that with a 10-foot pole because it was part of the books, and by that point they just decided to piss on every part of the book they could. But you know, I think that's a degree of it, because Jon had some warging touches with his relationship with Ghost. So, you know, that tracks a bit more for me.
I'm sure there's selfish ambitions with it for sure, getting a second dragon. But it's also like, hey, as he says when they're standing around the table there, in terms of conquest, our army leaves a lot to be desired. Another dragon helps. So, and to be clear, we don't actually see him get on the dragon and ride the dragon, and there's no guarantee that we will see him get on the dragon and ride the dragon. But my guess is he won't be the only one that does that in this clan. And maybe Rhaenyra would have had a problem with it, you know, before the events of Storm's End. After Storm's End, probably pretty sure she's like, yeah, go team.
No comment on the grounds of foreknowledge. Well, but I will say this: Jade brought up a point that one of Daemon's kid doesn't have a dragon. They both have dragons.
Not one of them from
Morning and Moonstar.
Maybe not yet. I think he might be spoiling some of that, but he specifically says in the episode only the one does. They've made a point of saying that all season. In fact, he looks down.
I thought by this point they'd mentioned them both as having them. I could be wrong about that, but.
You mean on top of being an asshole, he's also selfish? No. No, that guy, he's a saint.
Oh, I never said he was a saint. But this scene made me, for the first half of it, probably the first 2/3 of it, made me extremely happy. Because we don't really, in my opinion, get to explore that much Westeros in this show. Not as much as I guess I'm used to. Because we're always at Dragonstone, we're always at King's Landing, we're always at Driftmark. Like, that's 80% of the show right there, I feel like. And so to get to have a sequence as important as this one in a new location like Storm's End definitely made me happy for the sake of world building and character development all in one. And when you see Vhagar outside of the castle walls through the lightning bolts, I just had like a sinking feeling that something was not going to go well here. And the type of conversation that Rhaenyra had with her boys right before they left gave me another type of foreshadowing, sinking feeling. And so the atmosphere and the precedent was already there, and then the way things unfolded was just, to me, it was beautiful. I don't know how you guys took it. I'm curious how y'all felt about this scene, but for me personally, this was the episode stealer. This scene here was the pivotal, the consequential moment, and that sequence too. Like I've shown people just that image. Mondo watched the pilot with us, and then he hasn't watched anything since. But I showed him that screen grab, and he's like, "Dude, that's fucking badass." And I was like, "I know, you need to watch the show." And he's like, "Nah." But I show that to him, and then I show it to my brother who doesn't watch Game of Thrones for nothing, and he looked at that and he's like, "Whoa, that is a huge dragon." And so, like, there's something to appreciate for everybody in scenes and sequences like this. What from this scene did y'all end up enjoying the most? I don't know if it was for everybody, but I feel like there was enough in there for everybody to appreciate something, at least. I could be wrong.
It's the best dragon scene that we've ever gotten in Game of Thrones by a mile, in terms of, maybe not emotionally. You might love when Daenerys saves the guys on Beyond the Wall. You might love when Drogon saves Dany and Tyrion and everybody. You might love some dragon scenes during the Long Night. But this scene, from a technical standpoint, they have never shot a dragon scene better than this one. Everything that happens in the throne room is compelling. Jade called is it Boros Baratheon?
Yep.
The Wish version of Robert, which it kind of felt like that during the episode. He was something else. And I also kind of like that Aemon's just like, hey, I'm not gonna fight you. That's not a fight. Just take your friggin' eye out. I won't leave you blind. Obviously, a lot worse happens. But can I just say, this scene, as a Star Wars fan, I appreciated so much, because this was an absolute callback to when the Star Destroyer is taking up the Tantive 4 at the beginning of A New Hope. And like, you think the Tantive 4 is big at the beginning of A New Hope, and when he lands with the dragon, it's not Daenerys' size, but he's got a dragon. It's like, hey, that's cool. And then, like, just the scale, the shot, the way it's done. I would give that specific scene a 10 out of 10. I don't think they could have done better. There are movies that don't have CG that looks as good as they did it there. Not to mention, different show here. I'll get on Ian about this, but why the fuck can Star Wars not do that with their stagecraft? Just saying. Sorry. I'm done. Putting myself on timeout. Apologies.
Johnny, I guess it's you then.
It's that whole sequence to me was intense. Sean hit the nail on the head. He said it was the best dragon scene we've had, bar none, and I think it is. There might have been moments where you were more emotionally attached to the dragons involved, which made it more interesting. But from a technical standpoint, we've never seen a dogfight on Dragonback before, and that's what this was. And you could feel that all the way through it. Like the throne room scene was what it needed to be. It made Aemon look bad. It made the Greens look bad, and it made the Reds look good. And I'm all for that. Because I'm Team Rhaenyra. I've said that many times, and I'll keep saying that. But it was what it needed to be. I mean, yes, Boros was an ass. I didn't care for him at all, because to me it sort of played with that nostalgia of Game of Thrones of old. And you've seen that in some of the other characters. Like when you saw the Stark back in episode 1, they made him sort of look a bit like Sean Bean. And, they're trying to harken visually back to the characters bearing those names we know from Game of Thrones. I it is what it is, but I didn't like Boros the way he acted. He was boorish and just I didn't like him at all, just because of the way he acted and responded. And I liked the way that he was dealt with in sort of a way that he didn't. No promises were made to him. He was just reminded of his honor, and the only part that I'm like, hello, you are his cousin? I don't know the degree of separation, but I mean, no, that's Aaron. This is Baratheon. Never mind. I'm confusing houses. But it's just I didn't like the character. I don't know, because he was very just blech. But the dragon scene, that's where it was at, and and I know there were some who will say that, oh man, Aemon didn't start. It's not Aemon's fault. It was the breathing fire on the dragon to start. Well, if you weren't playing hot potato trying to literally pick him off his dragon, snapping literally at a dragon's tail, do you expect the dragon not to react to that? And that was still under your control, because you could see he was laughing and he was enjoying it, and ha ha ha, you owe a debt, and all of that. And then the dragons start acting for their own survival, and that's what animals are gonna do, and these are dragons on top of that. So Aemon is 100% responsible for everything that occurred on Dragonback. A, he didn't have to chase him. B, he didn't need to snap at him or try and grab him directly off his dragon's back with the talons. He could have given up the chase once he sort of went all using his size to his advantage and chasing through the canyon. He could have given up the chase at any of those points and still had his fun prior to that. But he instigated this 110% in my eyes, and the forthcoming events can probably be on his on his shoulders, and that's I don't know which events Zach has foreknowledge of now that he didn't before, but there are definitely events coming that fall squarely on his shoulders that have a huge impact on the dynasty going forward.
It reminds me of two real life scenarios. One, how many times have you heard the story of either a bully or a group of bullies are bullying someone and they go too far, and someone either gets badly hurt or killed? Yep. Sadly, we hear it way too much. Or two, the guy that thinks it's fun to own a lion or a tiger as a pet, and it behaves until it doesn't, and then it fucking eats you whole. And I thought that this, mirrored both of those situations.
Yeah, dragons will only listen to a point. I mean, you saw that in both instances, both riders trying to get their dragons under control. But by that point, the shine was off the apple. I mean, I'd argue that Luke succeeded to a degree getting his dragon back under control and trying to just fly away after he sort of went all dragony and breathed fire on him, sort of as a back off. Because I mean, you can tell the dragon's 10 times its size. He knows that fire is not going to do anything, but it's a back off, leave us alone, and it's that sort of it's that smaller person being bullied by the big guy who eventually shoves him and does absolutely nothing, and it just progresses from there. And
let's not forget that this is a character that was bullied, right? It's the bullied becoming the bully, right? He gets he's out of control now. It's weird because he was kind of like a different character as a child, and then he got bullied too much, and then he took command of the dragon, and then now he's overconfident and a little bit. He's definitely become a different character because of what's happened to him. So I think it's great character development in that character. And once again, the character has like a screen presence that's just off the charts. It's so like, I mean, he's not a famous actor like Matt Smith, but those guys both command quite a presence every time they're on the screen. And, Sapphire looking eye or not, like, he fucking took it off, and he's got quite a look to him. And he's a very interesting character. So I thought that they did a really good job on this character in this episode, obviously playing a pivotal part in the end there.
What did you think of the dragon chase sequence, though? You're a guy that appreciates good action in movies. I thought this was very compelling.
It was spectacular. It was jaw dropping. When you think that he's going to get away, or maybe you consider that he might get away because he's flying in a small canyon there, and you're like, okay, well, that's that, guys. That's the end of it. And then you're like, wait, but is it? No. And they did such a great job of making it look like he was going to call off the attack, and then all of a sudden he's back. And it was very exciting, great chase. It looked great. I love the idea that they flew above the clouds as well, except for it should be much harder to breathe up there than they made it look. I thought it was really great scene, awesome. It was definitely a cool way to end the episode too. The largest ending sequence at least.
So
it was pretty exciting. I definitely caught myself a couple times doing this. Just being like.
I said
this before a couple weeks ago. That's why you watch TV. If you can't go like, holy shit, like at something like this, then they did a bad job. So
the only reason I watch TV is to get away from reality, and this type of show is exactly as far away from reality as I can possibly get. So, and yet it's still rooted in reality, which is what's so fascinating and compelling about the show. Sean, if you could pull up that previous screen grab you just did up above the clouds. That shot right there, that look right there, reminded me so much of the larger Loch Ness monster type creature that almost eats Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Jar Jar in The Phantom Menace. The one that kind of comes up from nowhere and ends up eating the Kolo clawfish, and they just barely get away. For some reason, that rising up, jaw opening, grabbing the creature midstream, that part there just ended up really resonating and giving me some Star Wars vibes a little bit there.
Thinking of some sort of meme where it's like, this is you when you see Star Wars, and the good guys get away and he eats something else. And you watch this show for the first time or something, and this happens to be the first episode you put on. It's like, oh, well, I mean, they're not going to have the kid get killed and chewed. Oh, okay. And it's like, yeah, he obliterates them. It's tough. I didn't know how graphic they'd get with that. Johnny and I had been hinting, at these.
This was what we were hinting at last week, very heavily.
And they show it all right.
They show enough to let you know that there's no coming back from that. But what I find interesting is it wasn't a chomp out of a desire to eat, which is what happens for most predators. Those types of bites, they take a bite out of it because that's like the protein area. They're hungry. The chomp that Vagar puts on Arax is completely out of spite, and he gets chewed up and spit out basically, out of the spite from getting a little scorch on the neck. And I don't think this is quite the appropriate place for it, but I love how many memes have been made about Vagar in the last 24 hours, because it's so funny how they start personifying Vagar's character in the form of memes, and the internet just continues to be undefeated in that sense, because I don't think I necessarily gave any kind of anthropomorphization to Vagar. But to answer your question, Sean, we can probably do a couple of them now. I don't mind if you've got them pulled up. Um, this was gonna kind of tie into my final thoughts, and we're getting pretty close to that. The only other scene that we've got is the very very end. After all this transpires, Aemon has a little bit of a look of regret, and Rhaenyra ends up looking like Daenerys. And I personally love this look. I was mad that it went to credits after this, because I guess I personally have been waiting for war to break out for this entire season, and this was like the very 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 first act of war, and now we have to wait until like 2024 before we actually see the war unfold. I was hoping for a little bit more than that, but I am learning to appreciate what we got.
So that would be my natural assumption too, that we're waiting till 2024. It's been implied by a bunch of people. Worst case scenario, it sounds like fall 2024. Likely scenario sounds late spring 2024. However, Ryan Condal was interviewed by a bunch of people recently, in the last 24 hours. Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and one of those places asked him, "So is there a chance that we get this show next year?" And his answer wasn't no. His answer was to be determined. So I can't help but wonder if HBO is going, we could do 5 episodes at the end of the year and then 5 more 4 months later and split it up and get 4 months worth of subscriptions out of people. And Stranger Things did the same thing. Walking Dead did the same thing. I'm sure there's other examples that have done it. But the other side of this is, from the time they started shooting to the time the TV show debuted, it was 14 months. That was in deep pandemic, and there was no guarantee of when it would come out. Well, now, one would think without those restrictions that they can probably work a little bit quicker. Although Kieran brought up how good the dragon fight looked. I think we all loved it. And Zach mentioned how he was waiting for war to break out. This war isn't going to be a bunch of, at times it'll be soldiers on the ground for sure, but you're going to need big dragon sequences. And you just set the bar with this one. You can't come back with 2 more that look like half as good as this one did. Everything now, obviously you might not have the storm setting, but everything's got to look pretty compelling. And it makes me wonder just how far ahead they've worked on the dragon sequences, knowing that they use stagecraft for it.
Well, Johnny, not to get too spoilery based off of Sean's comment, but based on the contents that I read and a line that a particular dragon rider gave, there is definitely a dragon-filled battle sequence on the horizon that'll involve both dragons and ships that I'm particularly excited for.
There's a lot more to come. We don't know how much they're going to change the events from the book to the series, and that obviously plays a big factor, in what we're going to get from what we know versus what's going to happen. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of, juxtapose some of those battles that are to come with what we've just saw, because this was just such a gorgeous sequence that, like Sean said, we can't now drop that quality and lose some of it. It's definitely going to be important going, and this episode set a bar. and that bar goes beyond just the dragons. It just goes to the level of visual effects, period. And this episode set a bar for that, and it set a very high bar for that. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward whether or not they continue it with that, or if some of the quality starts to dip as we get more and more intense sequences, with more dragons around. And this one was much easier because it was just one dragon versus one dragon. Once we start getting up to once we start seeing more dragons in the air simultaneously, it's going to be hard to maintain that level of detail, and without it getting exorbitantly expensive. So I think it's going to be interesting to see those things, because like I said, there's a bar, and we'll have to wait and see if that bar's continually hit or improved upon once we start increasing the number of dragons per battle.
Oh, dragons per battle. I love that. I love that. I love that phrase, because in the OG Game of Thrones, the dragons per battle was either 1, 2, or 3. And now we are not nearly quite so limited, which is exciting. Let's go through that final sequence in the throne room with Rhaenyra, give thoughts on that, and then final thoughts on the episode as a whole. Then we'll go around and do Champions of the Week, and then we'll go around and do our score out of 10. So, Sean, thoughts on the final sequence and thoughts on the episode?
I think the episode is my favorite this season. I just think it tells an incredibly compelling, heartbreaking story. Almost too much heartbreak. Like, there's a lot of heartbreak in this episode for the Blacks team Rhaenyra. But it was very well done. And that last scene, we follow Daemon, like before he even gets to her. The way he's walking through the room, he's not. When do you ever see Daemon walk like this? You don't. He's a head up, hey, don't fuck with me type guy. And he's just sort of keeping to himself. And he takes her by the hand and pulls her to the side, and we see her almost fall over. And it is emotional. It's horrifying. I said to Jade after watching this episode that there was legitimately more horror and suspense in this than in Halloween Ends. And that's not even a shot at that movie. I just think the way they chose to design this episode fell more into like the horror and suspense area. Like, I don't know about you guys. There's a ton of it in this episode. The suspense, what happens next. And I could be wrong, but I think the last theme we hear there is her theme of during the coronation from earlier in the season, but almost with like this Darth Vader-esque tone put onto it.
Like, so I don't know. Almost.
Yeah, like it's much deeper, and maybe it's just a whole different piece. I don't know. I want to get this on vinyl. The whole soundtrack was amazing, or score was amazing. I know Kieran's not high on it, and I'm probably pissing him off every time I bring it up, but my number one want on vinyl right now is the score to the show.
Mine is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Yeah, that's a soundtrack, not a score.
I'll take that soundtrack.
Soundtrack, sure, it's great.
But the number one want on vinyl. Johnny, thoughts on that final sequence and thoughts on the episode?
It is very telling to an actor's skill when they can pull you through the gamut of emotions without a word. And that is something that they achieved in this sequence phenomenally. Like, you can see Rhaenyra's, you can see the moment when she finds out, her processing it, the moment when her knees buckle and she weakens and nearly falls. It just, all of those things, you can just feel all of the different emotions that they're feeling. And it's intense. It runs you through the gamut. And, then you see that moment where they where Rhaenyra steals and, chin up and turns around, and that you can see the fire in Rhaenyra's eyes at that moment. And it's intense, because that's the moment, that she's in this war now. She's in the war. That's it. There's she's not going to be holding back anymore, and that is it. They are now in a war footing, and they are prepared to spill the blood of the Greens. And I loved it because you could see all of those emotions that they portrayed so phenomenally, and Matt Smith as well. You could, like you said, when you see him walking in sort of forlorn and in pain, which is a testament to him and the character that they're feeling that way, and this isn't their child. This is one of the bastard children that aren't his, and he's still feeling that emotion, and and it's compelling. That's the only word I can come with. Is it's compelling, because in that last minute, there's no words spoken. Takes you on just a wild roller coaster of emotions that is just intense, and I can't wait to see how they continue that going too.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Kieran, you're up.
I don't know what I could say that that hasn't been said by Sean and John already, but like it was very, very well pulled off. The emotion of both characters throughout the whole episode was amazing. The character, like the acting, like just like Sean mentioned, like their faces weren't even visible, and like you could just see like it wasn't like she just goes like, I'm sad now, like there was kind of a uneasiness, and you could see she kind of like rubs the side of her body, just kind of like a weird like chilling like emotion going through your body. Like it was very well done, and I mean, yeah, throughout the episode both characters were amazing. Fantastic acting. As for the episode, here's the thing I have with the episode is a very good episode. Don't really have very much to complain about, except it just I feel like this is like not a great way to end the season. Like I feel like the idea that they had of having all these time jumps and then having half a season kind of in the present time. Honestly, I think the whole idea it didn't turn out good. Like I don't think it turned out good. I think when you look back at this season after the series is completed, it's going to look like half a season kind of happened, not a full actual season of a show. I'm kind of also settling more on the fact that this is just never going to be like Game of Thrones. I don't think it's going to be I think that it takes place in the same world and it has the same edginess and grit and the set designs and all that stuff, but the actual soul of the show I don't think will ever be Game of Thrones. I think that they're probably missing something that they are not really interested in keeping. With that, the episode was amazing. It like, to me, it's a great episode 5 or 6 of the series, but like not the greatest ending. I didn't really appreciate it in that it doesn't seem like there was a definitive ending at all. It seems like it's not even the ending of a chapter, but still the middle of a chapter in my mind. But I mean, I'm not going to explain it any more than that. The episode was great, and you'll see in my ranking of or my rating of the episode that I don't not like the episode at all. But I feel like ending off the series now that season 1 was still kind of a mixed bag, and it was okay.
I think in the early part of the season, I gave it some pretty low ratings. If I remember right, I gave one of them like a 7 or a 7.5, perhaps. But I think as the show progressed and we came to know the characters a little bit better, I actually found myself being a little more grateful for the foundation that was laid than I was when I first watched it, because I don't think I would have the same visceral emotions towards this episode's circumstances if I didn't have the context of those first 4 or 5 episodes. If I don't have Rhaenyra's relationship to her father, then I'm not sympathetic to her cause to hold off and call the banners and gather her resources. I would have seen that as weak if I didn't see Viserys's character in the first half of the season doing the exact same thing. I don't think I would have been as sympathetic to her miscarriage if I hadn't seen her mother go through the cesarean in episode 1. There are things from the first half of the season that end up impacting the character development of the second half of the season. And so for me, I have a little bit more appreciation for this episode because of the connectivity and the cohesiveness that it provides to the whole season. I'm definitely with the Blacks after the way Otto behaved on the bridge. I don't think there is anything that could ever sway me to the Greens. And I think that's kind of what the show has been trying to do from the get-go. Like it's been trying to help you understand where the Greens are coming from, but I honest to God have not seen anybody on social media say that they side with Alicent and her kids. Like there's nobody in this show that wants to support them over Rhaenyra. I don't see that happening, and I don't see the show as trying to present it as such. And so I think season 1 did what it was setting itself out to do, which was create Rhaenyra into a sympathetic character so that you understand where she's coming from and the decisions that she's going to make during the actual Dance of Dragons. It officially starts in this episode. And this is probably why I had a lower opinion of it last night than I do tonight. My wife could tell you that I was pretty silent when the credits started rolling. I was having a trouble time processing what I had just seen and how the realization was kicking in. I had to wait for the stuff that I had been waiting for this whole fucking season. Like, I'll admit, I'm still a little disappointed by that. Like, I wanted a battle. I wanted something more than what we got with Vhagar and Arax. What we got was great, but I didn't want that to be the thing. I wanted it to be a thing. And it ended up being the thing, and I'm coming to terms with that now, and I'm understanding where it's coming from. But this episode is really helping me solidify this entire first season is almost like a prologue. Everything about this is setting up the Dance of Dragons, but we don't see anything from the actual Dance of Dragons. We see the event that causes it. We see the Pearl Harbor of the Dance of Dragons, more or less. But we don't see the actual dance transpire yet.
Well, even Pearl Harbor was a fucking war, though. Like,
yeah, it's the closest metaphor I've got. What are you gonna do? We see those things transpire that gets Rhaenyra to join the fight the way the U.S. joined the fight after Pearl Harbor, and so I am on better terms with this episode than I was, but I still am like back and forth between what rating I'm going to give it, and I'm actually borrowing a page out of your playbook, Sean. I'm not going to let emotion be the only thing that helps decide this. The emotional side of me wants to deduct a couple of points, but from the technical standpoint, the acting, the cinematography, the execution, all of that is going to help build it back up a little bit. So I'll lead off the scores out of 10, and then I guess we can close with our champions. But I'm giving this episode a 9 out of 10. It's a 9 for me. The emotion wants it to be closer to an 8, but I'm gonna let the technical stuff carry it back up to a 9.
See, like if I was doing this like we do the Overlook, it'd be damn close to a 10. And I'm hearing what Kieran was saying, and I'm bummed that it's not hitting with him the same way that it's hitting with me, because I'm having thoughts right now that would probably drive him bananas. But we'll save that for a couple of weeks. And the truth is, like, until 3 or 4 months from now, I'm not really going to know how I felt about this season. I just know how I feel about it in the moment. You watch something new and you could see it and be like, yeah, it's, the best thing. I walked out of The Force Awakens going, man, that or Empire. And then with 2 or 3 months later, I was like, oh, duh, Empire. But I still really like that movie. And I won't know till then. But I can tell you that I flat out that I liked season 1 of House of the Dragon more than season 1 of Game of Thrones, although it has advantages that never had. There's no Game of Thrones show before Game of Thrones that it gets to stand on the shoulders of, so that's a massive head start. And the difference between $275 million budget and whatever the season 1 of Game of Thrones was, very small. I know that. So those are things working against it, but like it's going to be up there. Like when we do 9 seasons of Westeros here and trying to rank them, it's probably going to be very high on my list. And this episode really took it home, man. I'm giving this episode a 9.5. This was my favorite one this season.
I am pretty much going to echo just that. This episode was phenomenal. It was amazing. It had everything I wanted. It had an epic battle. It had intense storytelling. I mean, are there things I take away from this episode? Sure, but not enough that knock it down gratuitously far. So I am also in the 9s, but I'm at 9.25.
I will. I will. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9, which, like I said, it's hard to separate my feelings about the episode from my feelings about the season. Like, my problems are all with how the whole season as a whole looks now. It looks kind of like, oh well, there was kind of this one episode, then there was these 2 you kind of group together, and then there's these 2, and then the last 5 are kind of, they don't really like. I feel like it's just a mixed bag, but the episode itself is fantastic. Like, what could you knock about the episode, really? It's got a lot of emotion. It's got great acting. It's got great effects. Everything looked great. The battle was awesome. The characters were badass. It did a lot of things for a lot of characters. There's really not. The only reason I'm not giving it a 9.5 or a 10, a 10 is really reserved for me. I don't know how many 10s I'll ever give out, but it wasn't my favorite episode. I definitely felt stronger about episodes that were Viserys heavy in the season. But yeah, a 9 is not too shabby for any episode of any show.
Before Zach gives his, I'm glad somebody brought up Viserys, because I don't think we've talked about him enough in this episode. And well, he doesn't physically appear. He's kind of like Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens. Well, he's not in a lot of the movie. The movie is about him, and a lot of events that happen in this episode are about him. And I'm gonna, when we go off air, you'll hear a little clip that we'll play if you weren't here at the beginning, and it's the line he says to Rhaenyra back in episode 1. Boy, does it ever come true in this episode.
You got Star Wars brain tonight, don't you?
I just think a lot of them borrow from the same mythology. George R. R. Martin's pointed it out before. Just one of them goes a little darker, and the other one is a serialized kids thing.
Will Game of Thrones ever have a Jar Jar?
Yes, his name is
Hodor.
Tyrell.
He was useful.
Mace Tyrell. Yes. Oh, that's who he's like.
They both commanded an army, even though they were idiots.
And they both enjoy whistling and tunage that is very poorly timed and not appropriate. And somehow they both got laid. I don't know how, but No, I already gave mine when I was kind of doing my wrap up thoughts on the episode. A 9 out of 10 is my score for this episode as well. And I guess I'll kick off champion of the week. And you know what? I want so badly for it to be Rhaenyra, but she didn't necessarily champion anything. Like a lot of what she suffered was setbacks and defeats, and she didn't really. I didn't feel like she championed anything, even though Emma Darcy probably stole the show. That would be giving a champion performance of the week. But as far as like a champion character, I don't know if it was Rhaenyra. So I'm gonna give my champion of the week is gonna be Vhagar. Who says dragons can't be the champion? And the imposing presence that she had at Storm's End when they first land, and the driving forward of the story that transpired without having to say a fucking word. There was definitely a lot of plot development that took place because of the actions that she took. And like you mentioned, Sean, from episode 1, there is no taming a dragon, and we saw that on its fullest display in this episode.
Yeah, I'll keep mine short. If you look back through this episode, we talk early on about everything Rhaenyra goes through, and well, she didn't win any battles necessarily, on the field anyway. Everything she goes through and perseveres through, and even at the end, like that acting performance by Emma Darcy, where looks like she's going to fall over and then catches herself and rubs her side. It's almost like you begin to see her become unglued. And then instead of just completely melting down, she puts the game face on, turns around, and is more determined than ever, only this time to actually go win a war rather than avoid the war. So for me, it's Rhaenyra.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind that Rhaenyra is without doubt the champion of this episode, because, she may not, being the champion episode isn't just about, having the best battle or being the most fun. It's having impact on an episode, and she without question had the most impact on this episode, through her actions and her work. And her performance was just simply phenomenal throughout the course of this episode. I loved how much they were able to keep me intrigued and interested in the emotions and even events I knew that were coming. They still managed to suck me in and pull me in a way that, I still was able to ooh and ah with, everyone else at the right moments, even though I knew what was coming, what was about to happen. I just loved it. Everything about the way they acted in this episode, their actions, their emotions, their feelings. That last sequence solidified it. But, the prior sequences, when Rhaenyra, brought her court to her side and took control with her words, and all of those different sequences make Rhaenyra my champion for this episode.
I really like Zach's idea of making Vhagar the champion, but I didn't think of it, so I'm not going to do it. I'll let him keep his moment. That was pretty awesome. Before I mention that, what's really sad, and I don't want to open another can of beans, but we did not talk about Corlys at all, and it was pretty cool that he came back. And we did not talk about Rhaenys very much either, and she was kind of an interesting character in this episode too. Unfortunately, we've already gone 2 hours into this episode, so we're almost there. I just wanted to mention that those characters were really cool in their small minutes of time in this episode. It was cool, and it was cool to see Corlys back because I really enjoyed that character as well. I'm going to give it to Rhaenyra as well. Actress stole the show. Like I said, I really enjoyed the fact that she tried to take up her father's legacy, and I really enjoy that whole part of it. It seems like in a world where everyone's like, let's go fuck these guys up. Like, we're getting some crazy territorial badassism here, and between everyone. She's like, it's exactly actually like Rhaenys says to Corlys, you know, like she's trying to hold the place together. She's trying to be as wise and smart and peaceful and I don't know what word I want to use for it, but she's, you know, trying to keep everything together, and she's doing what she thinks is right. And sometimes being peaceful is way harder than just telling your armies to go and fucking kill people. So really love that the character development there, even though that is obviously going to dissipate really quickly into a probably a very rageful person. But you know, that's what happens when your kids all die. It was a great performance, and I it was no doubt to me that I was going to give it to Rhaenyra. Except when Zach said Vagar, then I kind of thought about it.
I too meant to give credits somewhere to Corlys's return, because I always found his character to be compelling, and to have him absent for a couple of episodes was really important for other people's character development, but also for how he is going to decide how things play out for his family whenever he returns. And to hear his wife's perspective and then take it to heart and actually apply it with a decision that not just affects him and his family, but his entire fleet, his house. That was a big decision that needed to be made at a big moment, and he did what needed to be done that was in the best interest of his house. I know that he probably still has begrudging feelings towards Rhaenyra and Laena's death, or what he believes to be death. And so that will most likely come back to play at some point, I feel like. But the commitment that he makes now in this episode with the, you know, support and the wisdom from his wife, those were some pretty important sequences.
I like that he's like, they're like, oh, your brother died, and he's like, you know, it seems like he's gonna get angry, and he's like, yeah, he you know, it was committing he was against the throne. I don't know what did he, because he called the kids bastards and basically, you know, whatever, and it wasn't even like he was like, God damn, killed my brother. He was like, my brother, what a fucking dumb move. Like, he didn't even, he accepted that he committed a crime and then he died. Like, really quickly was like, oh, well, he did something stupid.
He understands how the game is played, and he understood that his brother made a wrong move in the game, and it cost him his head. So, yeah, he has a very clear understanding of how this game gets played, and understood that this was the best move in the interest of his house at the time. So I get it. One final thing that I would like to point out that really isn't pertaining to this particular episode or to this particular season or even this show, but one thing that I noticed during the final season of Game of Thrones, season 8, particularly on Twitter, the number of memes went way down in the final season. Seasons 6 and 7 had some really, really great memes, and there were some really, really great creative memes that got made, and some really great, you know, pieces of viral content that went around. But when season 8 came around, it was so divisive that people really weren't making as many memes of them because they were afraid of getting shut down by the rest of the internet, and so it just didn't happen as much. This show seems to have sparked a revival of Game of Thrones related memes on the internet, and I am so thrilled that they're back. I mentioned one or two of them on our last episode, and I sent a few to Sean throughout the day. I don't remember exactly how many of them he was able to compile, but I just wanted to throw a couple of these out there before we closed out the night, because they echo a lot of the thoughts that I have, and they're done in like super, super creative ways as well. So, Sean, I don't know if you have a couple of those up and loaded. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few of those before we call it a night. Eamon's going, Vagar, no! And it looks like the Nike font. It looks like just do it. But instead, the dragon's just saying, fuck them kids. I love it. I love it. And maybe it's because it's late and I'm delusional, but it's internet content getting
got me.
getting back into it again. Which one is this?
The one that's on screen right now.
The one that's on screen right now. There was another one where Arax breathes negligible on a fire, and Vagar, I took that personally. I don't get this other one. This one on the right, I still don't understand this meme format. I understand that it's all about being in all caps and like explaining things out in a really drawn out fashion. But it echoes sentiments that we've expressed tonight about how Viserys was right in saying that controlling dragons is an illusion. That whole scene over Storm's End was a personification and an example of how trying to control dragons is a complete illusion. And these are that like relatively intelligent memes that are also still pretty damn funny as well. And I personally am excited that they have come back. And I'm also personally grateful that Sean's willing to throw these up on the screen for my sake. He's basically humoring me right now because I'm crazy and love memes, but this type of stuff is the stuff that I'm here for, because this shows me that the audience is actively engaged, not just in the show, but also in the discourse of it all. The conversations are alive and well again, and people are, getting so invested in the show that they are committing to one side or the other, mostly to Rhaenyra's side, but they're also committing their creativity to the show in their own special way. And I personally just think that's really cool.
Imagine studios had the meme numbers for things. Like, they're like, the show only did 400,000 views last week. And like, yeah, but what about the meme retention? Like, look at these
Yeah.
fucking 10 million memes here, guys. Like, we got a hit.
Oh, man.
It's true. It's true. You've got to take pleasure in all forms of media. These are two that I particularly enjoy, because the one on the right is definitely how I'm going to feel about season 2. Whenever we get it, I'm going to be watching Rhaenyra burn everything to the ground, and I'll just be sipping my tea or my beer or whatever, and I'll just be going, good for you, girl. Good for you. And then those two images that are in the Office meme format are the ones that Sean was showing side by side separately earlier in the podcast. I just threw that one together in order to try and join the conversation. It didn't go nearly as viral as the one on the right, but I contributed in my own little way, so I thought it was fun. But yeah, the meme game has definitely been stepped up again by the Game of Thrones community, and I am excited that people are that engaged with the show again. I'm bummed that they don't get to keep that engagement going because the season's over. But I'm also excited that there's enough content out there for this show to go on more and more for future episodes, talking about things about the entire season, things about the characters. We've definitely got a lot of content still on the horizon, even though the season's over. And I'm pretty excited about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I was very unsure about how much attention the show would capture compared to the original. I think I got into multiple discussions with Kieran and Johnny on Phantom Empire Live over just like the last 2 years, where I was like, hey, if this show can be half as successful as Game of Thrones, then I'm going to call it a win and, be with it. Well, right now it is more successful than Game of Thrones in terms of viewership numbers. And I don't know where is sky the limit? Do they start to go down? Right now, it's insanely high. It makes me wonder how much more they're willing to invest into this show. But you never want it to reach a point where they're like, and so Kieran didn't like the fact that we skipped so much time this season. And right now we know that at least for the Rhaenyra story that they're telling, the intention's 4 seasons. Let's not take 4 seasons and make it 7 seasons if you only have 4 seasons worth of story. If you only have 4 seasons, and this, I'm the guy that wanted more of everything. But if they would have stopped Supernatural, 5 years before they did, I'd probably be happier. And for this property, no different. Like, they're going to go all through the Targaryen bloodline. If you only have 4 seasons of material, keep it to 4, regardless of what the numbers are saying. If you got people to tune in to this season at the rate that you are, it's not just because of dragons. They help, but let's be honest, we haven't seen too many dragons up until the finale, really. They're not featured a whole lot in the first season 1. Still way more than in Game of Thrones, but I think that they, as long as they keep making quality TV and hitting on all those highs, they'll be able to tell whatever story they want and whatever air they want, as long as they take the love and care that they've done with this.
Well, I mean, they should have other tales to tell. So when this one is, I totally agree. They have 4 seasons or 5. Like, don't stretch it out, because if you really want to keep these numbers, like, go ahead and greenlight that Jon Snow show. Like, before, go do 3, 4, 5 other ideas I've heard. Like, you can, there's plenty of other things you can do. Just don't ruin a story by stretching it out and being like, you know what, actually, this person didn't die then. This person actually dies 5 years later, and we'll tell you all about that.
No, there's definitely a lot more to look forward to, not only in Westeros, but also here on this channel. And even though we're nearing the end of this episode's discussion, and we're nearing the end of talking about this particular season, that does not mean that this podcast is ending, because we've got some really great partners that have jumped on board saying, hey, we want you guys to talk about more of this. And they're putting their money where their mouth is and saying, we want you guys to be doing this as regularly as possible. And so we're hearing that, and we are answering the call, and there's going to be more Game of Thrones discussions than what you are getting for House of the Dragon. House of the Empire is meant for all of Westeros, not just this particular show. So be on the lookout even during the off season for more content, because it is going to be there, whether you're on Patreon or whether you're just watching on the channel. There is going to be more from Westeros to come. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, no, bang on. We're going to be doing so much, and definitely keep up to date with everything we're doing here at the channel. Zach, I'm just going to do some plugs here, and then you can take us home. Number one way to support the channel, patreon.com/Phantom Empire. We will have an exclusive episode of House of the Empire over there every single month that you won't be able to get on the main YouTube channel. So Zach and I are working on a way to bring you guys that episode every month, and then Kieran and I don't know how involved Johnny will be. It'll depend on his availability, but are going to tackle all things Westeros for the next year and a half, and we'll see how that plays out. So and I know Zach will be joining us once in a while. I'm sure Johnny will be in here once in a while, and lists, and this person versus that person, and what should they do next, you name it, we'll do it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. But Zach was mentioning the sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. Our friend Chris, who's a member of our Fandom Empire executive producer Patreon tier, longtime supporter of this channel, does Michael Myers rehaul masks. If you're interested in getting a Michael Myers rehaul mask, check him out on Twitter and Instagram, Chris C_78. His work is fantastic. And by the way, when you sign up for the Fandom Empire Patreon, you actually get a discount on his masks. So go check out the tiers and what level of discounts you get there. And to Jesse, supporting Bunce Force Trauma. You can catch them at Tasty Treat Master at yahoo.com, soundcloud.com, and Bunce Force Trauma, or at Facebook/Bunce Force Trauma.
Couldn't do it without their help, and so it's great that we get to continue these discussions even beyond the 2+ hours that we're doing for this particular episode. And like he said, there's plenty of ways that you can contribute, either if you join the episode and send in a super chat, or if you go to the Patreon. There's a lot of really great ways to be involved. There's also different Facebook pages and Facebook groups that you can be a part of to give us topic ideas and things like that. And we read all of that stuff and we take it to heart. So be sure to go join any of those pages as well. Speaking of pages, where can the folks at home keep up with stuff that's not these regularly scheduled Westerosi programs, Mr. Sean?
Main place is facebook.com/ I actually don't know what it is / so just type in Fandom Empire now and you'll find us. We talk about some stuff there, and then tomorrow night we have the Overlook Drive-In. We're doing Rob Zombie's Halloween, which I need to finish watching in like 20 minutes, so because I haven't seen it in a long time. That's every Tuesday night. Wednesday, Ian and I will have the Moose Too Far Star Wars podcast. That's on the channel as well, so be on the lookout for that. Johnny, you got something too, do you not?
Oh, you can find me Bros Before Pros, Twitch and YouTube.
Kieran?
I don't do anything.
He's got nothing. He says, fuck y'all.
Yeah, I got nothing. I got no side projects. My life is just a hollow shell.
Jeez,
there's nothing. I don't do shit.
that got dark really quick.
His life might be a Halloween.
I actually just sit in this chair until next week. Like, I'm just going to, I don't do shit.
I'll be right here for the next episode.
You're going to be in that chair a long time if it's the next episode of House of Dragon.
Oh, damn.
I'll probably look like Viserys by then.
Ouch. That's
man. Long live Patty. What a performance. Zach, how about you? Where can everybody find you at? What do you got going on?
Oh man, I've still got a few more weeks left of football season. I feel like we'll make it to the playoffs, but I don't know how well we're gonna do. So tune in when you can. We've got 2 more regular season games on Fridays, and then we may have 1 more game the week after that in the postseason. So Zach the Voice on all those socials. I'll drop the links on all those different pages. Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are the main places, but I'm also on things like Snapchat and TikTok. So go hit me up on those different places, find out about the sport broadcasting that I'm doing. And then the IPC podcast is doing like monthly episodes right now, just because that's how much time we've got available to be able to get our schedules to meet. So there's a new episode being recorded this week and hopefully dropping by the end of the week. So yeah, if you want to catch up on all the other stuff I'm watching and participating in and just get a life update and all that sort of stuff, just tune in to the monthly episode of IPC. But yeah, Zach the Voice, IPC podcast, and that's pretty much where all my creative juices tend to flow right now. Well, it's been almost 2.25 hours talking about this one episode, and I think that speaks a little bit more to the importance of this show to us than even all of the words that we actually said over the course of these 2.25 hours. We just enjoy the world of Westeros and enjoy each other's company enough that we can put up with each other for that long. But really, really appreciate you guys hopping on as consistently and regularly as you did to help us break down episode by episode of this season. I've said it before, I'll say it again, there is still more content to come, so please don't feel like this is the end. It may be the season finale, but it is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the final pieces of content that you're going to see from House of the Empire. So be sure to tune in next week to find out whatever that next episode, that next piece of content may be, but we are not done yet, not by a long shot. However, we are pretty much done with this episode. It's time for me to go to bed, and I know it's probably past time for y'all out there on the East Coast. So I'm going to go ahead and call it. That is it for the episode 10 discussion of House of the Dragon here on House of the Empire. For Sean and Johnny and Kieran, I'm Zach saying thanks for tuning into this live episode, and we'll see you next time when the Empire returns.
The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They are a power man should never have trifled with. When they brought Valeria, it's doomed. If we don't mind our own histories, it'll be doing the same to us.